Welcome to Common Sense. I'm Ed.
And I'm John. How you doing, Ed?
I'm good, John. Yourself?
I'm doing great.
I'm looking out the window. We're going to have nighttime. The headlights are going to be on in about another 90 minutes or so here, I think.
I know, it's crazy. I read an article yesterday about the whole premise behind daylight savings is false, and we ought to rise up against it. So, in fact, Massachusetts was going to move to Atlantic time or something like that. So, why not?
Yeah.
We'll all merge with Europe. Maybe that would help. I don't know. Anyway, today we're going to take a look at technology a bit. So we're going to look at the rapid pace of change in MarTech, or sales and marketing technology, and how well or not so well companies are keeping up with that. So I thought it'd be helpful to go right to a graphic that illustrates this concept. So here we see a chart of MarTec's law, and Scott Brinker at Chief MarTech came up with this idea, and it illustrates the rapid rise of technology, as you can see in yellow here. Exponential curve, just growing at a very, very rapid pace, compared with slower logarithmic change in organizations. And this gap between the two curves illustrates, the challenge that companies have trying to keep up with technology. So at least in this view, there isn't any leveling off of MarTec's law or any, closing of that gap naturally. So it'll be up to companies to try to do something about it. And Scott, of course, calls it the greatest management challenge of the 21st century. So I don't know if you agree with him or not. What are your thoughts on this challenge?
Obviously, we're focused on MarTech in this conversation, but it's not just MarTech. There's an interesting term, technology debt, that speaks to this problem companies are facing, where there's a lot of legacy IT systems that people work around in order to try to make them work that actually slow the business down, and that's across all disciplines. But when we talk about MarTech, I think for sure, and obviously Scott's got the data to back it up. Most people have seen his explosion of logos of all the different technologies. In the last 5 years or so, obviously there's just been such a rapid increase that it's compounded the problem between MarTech cloud-based apps and everything from website design to marketing automation and CRM and all kinds of tools in between and around. So now there's just this plethora of sales enablement apps, and we're moving quickly now from marketing and sales enablement into customer service and even AI. So it's growing in new applications. It's impossible to keep track of them all, much less really leverage and use them in the way they're meant to be, without having full-time staff assigned to just try to research and train and select the best ones. And of course, the cost. I mean, all of these SaaS softwares love the fact they're a subscription model. So, it's only $14.99 per user per month. And then you go, well, actually, we need the enterprise version. And well, actually, we've got 73 people using it. And suddenly, it's a significant investment. So there's a few core problems at work here. Number one, as we've talked, and you and your MarTech Whisperer role have talked, companies are not proactively planning their technology use. They just kind of react. They see a new shiny object and they cling on to it. And they waste a lot of time evaluating software and getting nowhere. No one's in charge of it. There's no playbook for identifying what's needed, for a process for evaluating, consistent standards for purchasing or onboarding, et cetera. Second, many cases, leadership teams don't understand the value of sales and marketing technology in terms of expanding sales, reducing operating costs, streamlining processes, and enhancing the customer experience. Sure, they get it. They love the fact they can get roll-ups of forecasts and that kind of reporting and some of the big brother monitoring. But there's a business case behind it besides just the kind of the micromanagement. And their lack of understanding in that way is deadly to many projects, because much of the new technology gets treated as discretionary or optional spending, and it's just viewed as easy to chop off or cut when things slow down, or limit to such a small pilot, almost as a courtesy to let somebody prove the concept, but knowing that the pilot's never big enough that it's actually going to demonstrate the value or be run long enough or with broad enough application. Third, what may be the most common issue is fear of the unknown. I mean, embracing this new technology often requires organizational changes in order to take advantage of its benefits. And that kind of change will often face stiff resistance. We talk about this at length in Common Sense Revenue Growth, how entrenched and deeply embedded interest in the organizational structure and in budgeting for marketing and sales and those kinds of things. It's hard to get people to agree beyond the status quo. And that's even without considering the impact of a buying team where you've got all these people involved, and just reaching a consensus is hard to do. So often the stuff gets shot down in budget meetings. Finally, it's hard to plan. I mean, many of these are actually solving for new problems. Some are problems that were created because of other technology that's been used. Some are problems created just recently because of rapid changes in buyer behaviors. And some are honestly problems that nobody ever thought of before, but they're real problems that now, as people become more thoughtful, they're uncovering. So we're trying to solve for new things that we never thought of before. It's not just a one-to-one plug-in with whatever the old technology used to be and what the new technology is. But it complicates it. With all those challenges, it's, as you said, it's hard. But how do you see, or how have you seen some companies successfully navigating these changes?
Well, I think as daunting as this challenge is, you still have to take it seriously, because, if you're standing in one place and your sales and marketing teams are doing things the old way, they still might be struggling from the same, inherent problems that they've always had, and you're not doing anything to solve them. And secondly, your competitors are probably getting ahead of you. They're probably utilizing a lot of this technology, which really does help the performance overall. It's been proven in a lot of cases. Not that you have to go out and buy the next shiny object, but if, you do this in the right way, in a sensible way, you can really overcome a lot of these issues that people come up with. So what to do about it? Well, that starts with a serious effort to assess what you need. What are you doing now, and where do you want to go, and how can technology help you get there? And that might well go to, bringing in a consultant to help you visualize these things, or, assigning someone internally to do that. So one approach many companies use is to create these visual maps of their tech stacks. And, that shows how the software relates to the customer journey at various stages of maturity. In this visual representation, this is what we call a tech stack. And this is, it's actually from a contest that Chief MarTech ran for companies, and to try to illustrate how they do technology, how they build their tech stacks for different purposes. This one happens to be for Cisco. And if you look at this chart at the bottom, is really the foundation of all kinds of customer-facing engagements or transactions. The customer data platform is shown here, and all the different applications they use for supporting and managing customer data. And then above that, you see these concentric circles starting in the middle with customers, the actual customers that they have. And then each one of these circles going outward represent different levels of the buyer journey. At the top here, we have renewal or first engagement, I guess, installation, shopping, awareness, and so on. So each one of these represents one of those stages in the customer journey. And then around the wheel here, we have different applications that are used for different purposes. So by the seller, by the partner, by the customer, and by the data management people, which applications are we using for these different stages of the customer journey? And one of the things that you discover by doing a visual modeling exercise like this is, first of all, figuring out what all you're using across the organization for these different purposes. And you may discover there's some redundancy or some things that are missing. You may have some gaps in this overall coverage of the customer journey, the customer process internally. So it does some really good things about sort of understanding how technology is being used, who's using it for what, and then, gives you a snapshot of what's being paid for and being supported at the moment. So you can, do some planning exercises and things along those lines. So this is just one possible model. Every company in this contest had different types of models and different ways of looking at it, which is really quite interesting. So, the ultimate outcome of this is you can develop an effective plan for updating your stack and maintaining it across all your teams. So what else can companies do to get their arms around MarTech's law?
So I just, first part of my answer, it's amazing to me how every topic that we talk about, so often we come back to this fundamental piece of understanding what buyers are doing and understanding how your company's interacting with them, rather than just jumping to, okay, we've got CRM, what are we going to use now? Like so often happens. This fundamental understanding of buyers is critical to so much of revenue growth today. But as you said, it's not easy. The tsunami of tech software is overwhelming many companies, and especially in the industrial manufacturing space, where companies are very sophisticated with their internal manufacturing software and ERP systems, but haven't kind of brought that same level of sophistication to their customer-facing stuff. The other issue that often happens is that there's a kind of a traditional association of this sort of decision with the IT department. And the IT department has, I'm sure, very specifically and thoughtfully reasoned cases for why they want to internally host things and they want to manage legacy systems, and some of it's that technology debt that I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. But they've got a vested interest in having a complex internal structure, and that's probably not to ascribe any negative intent to them. That's just the way they look at the world, and those people and those jobs filling those cubicles, getting paid for doing that work, are based on, to a large degree, on having that stuff internally. So if you rely on IT to make these decisions, you may not necessarily be getting the most agile answers for what you need. Smart companies are recognizing that this is a complex problem. When you try to bring in multiple departments, again, in common sense, we talk about marketing and sales and service and support and bringing all these functions together rather than just kind of this siloed sort of a view, and that adds to the complexity. And then you add in channel partners and distributors and other pieces to it, and it gets much more complicated. So there's a lot of hybrid teams. We've talked about it, how you can kind of consolidate sales and marketing operations. You may retool client service that will participate in evaluating MarTech and developing the playbooks for its use and training. So that's a step that companies can take to, I think, help it work better. But it also, it comes down to, again, kind of across everything we talk about in common sense, the management commitment, the vision, the determination that they're willing to make a decision, model the behavior, support the investment, hold people accountable, and move, the whole way through the process, consistently thinking about the customer. So that means that really, when it comes to to a sensible tech stack, ultimately, as the saying goes, the buck stops with the CEO, and they have to commit and hold themselves and the company accountable. So where does all this take us, John?
Well, I think we can wrap up this discussion by acknowledging that there is a tsunami and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Although there is some evidence you'll talk about in a minute that it may be diminishing somewhat in the near future. But at any rate, there's a big gap. So, I don't know, maybe there'll be some technology that helps us figure out technology, like AI-driven
dystopian.
Yeah, exactly, So we'll have assistants out there, digital assistants that help us figure out, which technology we need and how to implement it and what the cost is and all those sorts of things.
Right.
Even shopping for us, maybe. So we'll see about that. But these things probably already exist for all I know. So we probably just need to find them and start using them. But I think successful companies will leverage technology and do so in a rational way. I don't think they'll be just radically changing everything overnight, especially not manufacturing companies. But they will find technology that achieves their goals and keeps their customers happy it may take a little while and it may take some pain, but I think ultimately that's where we're going. But we will need people internally or externally who understand how to use technology. So it may be a new role for evaluating, implementing, training, and all that sort of thing. So, we'll see. But that's it for now, I guess.
Well, so I don't know if we've completely solved for MarTec's law as far as, middle market manufacturers go, but I think that we may not have to solve for it. You alluded earlier to this new Forrester study that's come out that predicts that VC investment in MarTech is going to plunge 75% from $7.8 billion in 2018 to $1.8 billion in 2019. And they attribute that to a lot of reasons. There was silly investment before, and there's consolidation, all kinds of stuff going on. So, maybe the next time, by the time we look at it again, it's going to be much less of a pronounced issue. And that'll give us time to concentrate on something that's sure to piss off everybody that watches, no matter what their perspective is. We're going to go way out on a limb and discuss the role of gender in marketing, where people tend to, what roles they tend to take, why that may be, how it may impact the effectiveness, and all that kind of stuff. So it's sure to, despite all best intentions, that we just have an honest conversation about what's going on, why it might be, and how it could be different. I'm sure we'll annoy some people, so we'll just have to prepare for that. But I look forward to that conversation. In the meantime, I'm Ed.
And I'm John, and together we're Common Sense. So for more of our conversations, you can check out our videos and podcast at riptidepress.com. And as we've mentioned a few times, putting all of this together, you can read our Common Sense Revenue Growth book on Amazon, or by going to www.commonsenserevenuegrowth.com. See you next time.